Okay, welcome to the first episode of our the Woke Institute's podcast and videocast simultaneously from Atlanta, Georgia. Your host, Rich Pellegrino, the Equalizer. Great to be here and to be offering this first episode of How Woke Are You Really? And the subtitle is How Woke Do You Really Want to Be? So, in the course of these episodes, what we want to explore is wakefulness. I mean, really, that's what being woke is all about. Hopefully, we're all trying to be more awakened to the realities of life, what's really going on around us, what's going on within us, individually, within our families, in our communities, and in the world. So, really, how woke am I? We're all in all humility, we are all in the process of becoming more awakened. I mean, I'm sure there are people that are out there who do not want to be woke because they look at it as a negative, um, and so we'll leave them to their sleep. They're happy in their bubbles of comfort, of delusion, and whatever that causes them to be asleep. But what we're interested in, what I'm interested in personally, is those people who want to join me on this journey of wakefulness, becoming more awoke. I've been at it for over 60 years, and I will be at it for another 60 years, hopefully, or however many years that I have left on this plane of existence. So I wanted to take you along on the journey a bit because I've been practicing it for well over 50 years, trying to achieve wakefulness and enlightenment or whatever else you want to call it, and not only achieving that knowledge and awareness, but utilizing it for the betterment of myself and others around me, my family, immediate family, my friends, acquaintances, acquaintances, my community, and ultimately my world. One of my favorite quotes is, "Let your vision be world embracing." Okay, not just confined to yourself, not just confined to your community or your family, but world embracing. And one of my favorite bumper stickers is, act locally, think globally. So we would try to apply those principles as we move along in this learning exercise together. So why me? I mean, why would you want to go along on this journey with me? Well, besides the fact that I'm intelligent, handsome, very experienced, and you probably know me if you're listening to this already, and know probably none of that is true, but and humble as well. However, I do have a lot of experience, and I've had many experiences, um, unusual to most, or unique. We all have our unique experiences in our unique life. I just had an opportunity and privilege, yes, privilege, unearned color privilege was part of it, is a big part of it, of why I'm even here today when you hear some of my story, or some of my stories that I'll relate to the principles of wakefulness. But many people who hear my stories say that it's definitely unique. Definitely the stuff of movies and series. Matter of fact, I'm commissioning someone now to write episodes for a series that will parallel uh, my life experiences with my learnings of how to become woke. And again, anything I tell you, anything I share with you, is my opinion, is colored by my experiences, my biases, good and bad. And so I will always encourage you to investigate yourself, think for yourself. That's the main thing we can encourage everybody to do, because there's not a lot of that today, especially in this country, in this society. People have been trained, conditioned to go along with the crowd, whether it's the celebrity crowd, the athletic crowd, you know, media crowd, whatever. We're bombarded with all of these um, influencers, is what they call it on social media, Instagram. By the way, you can follow me on Instagram now, Rich, at Rich the Equalizer underscore, or on Facebook is Richard Pellegrino the Equalizer. Okay, and why Equalizer? Well, from the beginning of my existence here, for some reason, I don't like bullies, and I don't like people being bullied. Maybe maybe I was bullied. I was bullied. I had an inordinately long nose that people could pick on, um, and whatever else. My name, Pellegrino, can be a lot of words can be uh, construed out of that name, pelican, and so forth. But anyway, besides name calling, at schools in New York where I grew up, there was a fair amount of bullying. It was kind of a way of life, and you were either, a lone wolf or part of the pack. So initially, I was a lone wolf and was picked on and bullied, and so that probably has colored my experience. Nothing extreme, nothing where I was beat up and constantly harassed or anything like that. But I'm looking back, just trying to find out where I developed my extreme aversion to bullying. Um, you know, Perhaps that was the foundation of it. And so, you know, not only do I have an extreme aversion to individuals bullying others, but to institutions, whether they are law enforcement, government, workplaces, and so forth, bullying the people there, whether they're workers, clients, customers, or in terms of law enforcement, suspects. So very sensitive to bullying, especially when one person wields power over another person or thinks that they do. And in this country, we know power dynamics are based on several things. Race, definitely. This unearned white skin privilege gives me power, unearned power, that I have to learn how to use properly. Uh, and Sometimes it's uniforms, badges that confer artificial power, and all types of gender. Men have always assumed and been taught that they're more powerful than than females. Uh, of course, this is all based on faulty teaching, faulty assumptions, and that's what being woke um, entails, is finding out what's true, quote true, because I always say there's three sides to every story. There's my side, your side, and the truth. Okay, so the idea is, let's get to that objective truth the best that we can without ever claiming that my truth is the truth or the only truth. Okay, so that's uh, so people who think they have power artificially conferred upon them by other people because of their position, because of their gender, because of their race or their class. Um, that's all nonsense. It's BS. And it's really the cause of most anguish, most anxiety, most, that's on the mild side, most fighting, brutality, murder, rape, uh, you know, self-destruction, suicide, and terrorism is the faulty are these faulty assumptions that somehow people have learned or have been ingrained or we've been conditioned to act upon. So what we're talking about really is self-improvement, to use the cliche, happiness. Okay, you can't be happy unless you know who you are. That's the first step of being woke. Who am I? My identity. Okay, and if you've been living a false identity that's been given to you by others, sometimes by your parents, well meaning in many cases, but they were given false information, false assumptions, and handed down to you. So if you don't have a proper identity of who you are, if it's based on false assumptions of some kind of superiority complex or inferiority, then there's no way you can be happy. There's no way you can achieve your goals, which I believe your goals, all of our goals, are wrapped around service. Service is the highest aspiration, is the highest station. Service, service to ourselves, service to our family, to our children, to our parents, service to our community, and ultimately service to the world. That's what makes us happy intrinsically, is when we see other people happy, when we see other people achieving their goals. Because one of my heroes and prophets is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., whose concept of the network of mutuality, he called it, which said basically, I can't become whom I'm supposed to be. I can't become truly awakened um, and truly rich Pellegrino until you become who you're supposed to be. In other words, especially if our paths cross, if they intersect, then there's some reason that we're supposed to help each other become who are supposed to be. This is all part of being awoke and wakefulness. And yes, I understand that woke nowadays has different connotations. It's about Black Lives Matter and understanding the social justice and racial dynamics of this country, which is all part of wakefulness. And it's really one of the foundations of it because, again, we've been living false racial identities, of superiority, inferiority, and so forth in this country. We've been indoctrinated and conditioned from the beginning, from its founding to now. People talk about being in a post racial time. We are not, we are just in the beginning stages of racial reckoning in this country. In my lifetime, I witnessed Jim Crow. There were lynchings. It was you know, separate but equal facilities in the South. Up north where I grew up, I traveled throughout the South. Up north where I grew up, separate neighborhoods, completely to this day even separate neighborhoods because they were never forced to integrate like the South was. So we are just at the very beginning of racial reckoning, and thanks in a large part to the millennial generations. Okay, we've been waiting for you for quite a while, especially my generation, because I grew up in the '70s, which was the hippie, Black Power, awakening, enlightenment, age of Aquarius, all different terminologies of that time period. But I'm grateful for being born into that because that was that helped hasten my awakening. Otherwise, I may still be asleep like many of my uh, Caucasian family acquaintances and so forth are. They don't get it. They've been living in a completely different reality. Two Americas or several different Americas, a whole different bubble. So I'm grateful for being born in the '70s and being part of that whole movement. and breaking away from the false traditions and assumptions that were taught to me by my parents, who were well meaning, they were loving, but they were given faulty and wrong information and assumptions, and were not in a space where they could or were encouraged to challenge them until the 70s when I came along, the oldest of four. Um, and so, yeah, I, I, uh, I partook of that, and I'll share some experiences uh, in the 70s of my awakening then. But, you know, largely after the hippie generation and the black power generation and so forth, after that decade, we kind of went back to sleep. Many of us, in many ways, in other words, relatively speaking, we weren't as radical. We didn't push for radical change or revolutionary change as we did in the 70s. Of course, we were met with great resistance then, including assassination, including imprisonment, of political imprisonment. And again, I only avoided that, all of the negative repercussions because I had white privilege. I also had, and I have, also had blue privilege because my old man, my father, was a cop, was a police officer, New York City police officer. So I was protected because I was white, and I was protected because I was related to him. I was blue, baby blue. And so I avoided incarceration, although I should have been. I had 9 felonies for selling drugs to federal agents, selling heroin, because I was a drug dealer. I was an international drug dealer, part of syndicates, um, not unlike many in that day. It was kind of a hypocrisy. Here we were becoming enlightened on one hand, studying meditation and yoga and psychedelics, and going to find ourselves and our identities through spiritual means and drug induced means and so forth, protesting the war, um, and standing up for civil rights and equal rights for all people. While on the other hand, we were killing ourselves and others with drugs. Okay, I was an am an addict. I'm not a practicing addict, but I didn't know that until I started using drugs. And I became addicted to every drug there was at the time, including heroin. Luckily, there wasn't crack, otherwise, I probably wouldn't be here today. That came afterwards, and that's another whole chapter of where mass incarceration came from. Um, so, yeah, if I was not white, did not have white privilege and blue privilege, I would have been I would have been incarcerated for many years. Instead, I got probation, uh, and I probably in the police. I may have been shot. I was apprehended by police numerous times. I was in protests where protesters were shot at, and so forth. So it was a tumultuous time, but it was also a great time of revolution. Oh, and back to the contradiction. So here we were, you know, standing up for positive things, for wakefulness, for being awoke. Well, and at the same time, we were killing ourselves and each other, with drugs. As a matter of fact, during the period of the Vietnam War, which was the first war in my lifetime, the endless wars that we've continuously fought unjustifiably and have not won. We haven't won any wars, not since World War One and World War Two, together with allies. So, the same period, uh, while we were protesting and getting high, we were dying from drug overdoses at a greater rate than people were being killed on the battlefields in Vietnam. As a matter of fact, more people died in that period from drug overdoses than died from the war. So, anyway, So we've been millennials. We've been waiting for you. I've been waiting for you. I jumped and joined right away when all the millennial movements, Black Lives Matter, and others started, because I've been waiting. Because we kind of fell back to sleep. But I'll share a little bit of that in subsequent episodes. So anyway, I guess I'm going to wrap it up soon. Um, I don't want to go on too long in each episode to give you a chance. But I started in the 70s, and they even made a movie on TV about my whole drug gang and so forth. And that helped get me out of it and get me uh, my profession then to become a counselor, because I was able to speak on that movie because I was portrayed in it. Um, and so fast forward, and many of us turned from drugs. How we got off of our addiction was a spiritual path, the 12 steps, which is not a religious path, it's a spiritual path. It doesn't dictate you believing in God or the God of what other people tell you, religions tell you, and so forth, but the higher power and God of your understanding, which again we're talking about independent investigation. And I want to refer back to this book called Sovereign Psyche by Ezra Arahon. I'm going to constantly refer to this because what we want you to develop, what I want you to develop to assist in your wakefulness and becoming woke, more woke, is to develop what he calls a sovereign psyche. Okay? Your own sovereign mind and psyche. Okay? That's what we're all in the process of developing. And the subtitle in this book is Systems of Chattel Freedom versus Self Authentic Freedom. And the point is, he shows, is how we don't have true freedom, okay, in this country. We have chattel freedom. We're slaves still. I wrote a paper, and I'll be happy to send it to anybody if you contact me on social media, of why we're still slaves. 50 reasons why we're still slaves. In other words, why everyone is slaves in different degrees. Okay? Uh, so we have chattel freedom, he says, versus self authentic freedom. That's what we really want, the freedom to be ourselves, the freedom to develop our identities in service to ourselves, our families, our communities, and so forth. That's what this is about. So next time, I'll bring you up to date as to where we are right now, where I am, and and some of the topics we're going to discuss. I mean, really, of course, the ongoing one is racism, how to be an anti-racist in this society, how to have true freedom. So social justice issues, yes, but we have to look at the world. If we say Black Lives Matter, which I do, and I believe 100%, not just because my children, by the way, of whom I have 8, are mixed, black and Italian, and my grandchildren as well, 7 of them so far. But this was a belief that I came to back in the 70s, before I even had black friends. It just made sense intellectually and spiritually. And then, of course, when I put it together with actually becoming friends and getting to know people as people, then I understood this artificial division is just that, for a purpose, for economic purposes in this country. Um, so uh, back to the so yeah, we're going to cover topics obviously having to do with anti-racism, but globally, yes, in America, but global. This is a global issue. Okay, the Earth is one country now, and mankind its citizen, is a quote from the Baha'i faith, of which I espouse, along with many other faiths. Um, so, what about black people in Africa? Do we know what's going on there? Do we know what our actions here, how our actions here, yes, even when you go to the store, affect black people in Africa right now? Okay? Everything we do has ripple effects, you know, out concentric circles from us to the rest of the world. So, anyway, we'll get into that with a global perspective, how Black Lives Matter everywhere. All lives, of course, we know that. Black Lives Matter always said Black Lives Matter too, or also. But, you know, Black lives won't, all lives won't matter until Black lives do. So we got to start somewhere. And then we'll also talk about what's going on right now in Afghanistan. You know, that's what's in the news. How did we get there? How did we get in? Why are we leaving? And why does it seem like nothing was accomplished? Okay, so, you know, those are a few current events, but also some personal things. What are we doing right in our own house? How are we taking care of the environment, our environment, inside and out? Okay, so I'll see you in the next episode. It was great talking with you. I hope you got something out of it. I piqued your interest to come back, and I will see you then. Ciao.